Hello, health enthusiasts, and welcome to Rev Up Health, your go-to podcast for all things wellness. I'm Dr. Mark Hechler.
And I'm Tandi Hechler. Together, we're here to fuel your health journey with the best of functional medicine and holistic well-being.
Each episode will dive deep into topics that matter to your health, bringing you the latest insights, research, and inspiring stories.
So whether you're on a quest for vibrant health or just looking for daily health tips, we've got you covered.
So let's embark on this journey together and transform the way you live. So Tandi, what's on our wellness radar for today?
Hello, and welcome to Rev Up Health Podcast. We are so glad that you've joined us today. I'm Tandi.
And I'm Dr. Mark.
I'm going to share a quick little story about Dr. Mark. He is a researcher, and oftentimes I will find him deep in a book or the computer, and I'll just ask, "What you doing over there?" And typically I'll get an answer like,
I'm just getting educated.
And this is one of the reasons that we're so excited about doing this podcast for you all. It gives us an opportunity to share some of what we've learned so that you can get educated. So that is our invitation today. Let's get educated.
Today we're going to take a closer look into blood glucose, commonly known as our blood sugar. So glucose is a simple carbohydrate, and its main sugar. Glucose is a simple carbohydrate, and it's the main sugar found in our body. It's your body's primary source of energy, and it comes from the food that we eat. Your body will break down most of that food into glucose and release it into your bloodstream. So insulin then is released to aid in this glucose absorption into various different cells like the muscle or the brain. And there are four main types of sugars. First is glucose. It's a simple sugar, it's a simple carbohydrate. Then there's fructose, which you find in fruits, honey, some veggies. And then, of course, this is where the high fructose corn syrup stuff, it comes into play too in this, which we can talk about that later in another podcast potentially. That's made from corn. Then we got sucrose, which is common table sugar as we know it. So that's glucose and fructose. And then, of course, we've got the lactose, which is from milk, which is made up of glucose and galactose.
The main source of sugar in the American diet comes from sugary drinks, desserts, snacks, like cakes, cookies, candies. It's interesting. Recently, there's been a big push on what our recommended allowances are. The USDA says that the average American eats 34 teaspoons of added sugar daily. And they are now just coming out with this new recommendation that says that we don't need more than 12 teaspoons daily, which is great that they're coming down. But ultimately, we don't need added sugar at all. We can get the sugar that we need from the food that we eat.
And then did you know that the American Heart Association recommends women consume no more than 6 teaspoons and men 9 teaspoons daily? That's crazy. Can you imagine 34 teaspoons of added sugar, average sugar that you consume in a day? That is just hard to imagine. But it doesn't necessarily have to be in sugars either. It can be in carbohydrates too, which is even worse. That will also elevate our blood sugar. But the truth is that the human body really doesn't even need added sugar at all. So we actually get more glucose than we need from our highly processed foods and starches.
So why is blood sugar important? The goal is to keep a very stable glucose because the spikes in your glucose are what can contribute to inflammation and an insulin resistance. 80% of people who are pre-diabetic don't even know that they're pre-diabetic. And this is a real shame because if they knew, they could start to take steps to reverse it before it actually becomes diabetes.
Now, traditional medicine, basically, they're typically going to only draw a fasting glucose, and they usually don't order a hemoglobin A1C unless the glucose is usually out of range because, insurance sometimes won't even pay for it. But the crazy thing is that your fasting glucose is the last thing that will change as disease progresses.
So how do we take a closer look? We're going to look at fasting insulin, which is pretty newly getting popular. We're going to look at a hemoglobin A1C, and we are going to also look at your fasting blood glucose. Also, there's a calculation that takes your insulin and your glucose, and that gives us a marker that's called home IR. So fasting insulin, I think, is a great test because it's one of the first things that will change when your pancreas is having to work extra hard over time to keep up with all the sugar that you're eating. So we're going to talk a little bit about normal versus optimal right now. And this is definitely something that we're going to educate a little bit more about later. But just so that you know, a normal fasting glucose is considered between 85 and 100. And as far as our thought, we want you to be under 85. A normal fasting insulin is going to be between 7 and 10. And we're going to say optimal is less than 7. Hemoglobin A1C, normal is going to fall into the 5 to 5.7. And optimal, where we'd like to see folks, is less than 5. Home IR, normal is less than 2.0, and optimal is less than 1. So knowing these numbers, we'd like to share a little story about part of what really got us going down this path. We went and got labs drawn, and Mark found out that his glucose was fine. Fasting glucose was fine, had always been fine. But in our new lab draw that we got where we were digging a little deeper, he found out that his hemoglobin A1C was actually 5.7, I think, high end. So I'll let him tell a little bit more about that.
Sam, so as you all know, if you don't know me, I am a very active person, and I like to do a lot of activity, a lot of exercise. I run multiple marathons a year. So for me, exercise is a way of life. It's a lifestyle. It's a necessity. And so to have that kind of active lifestyle, well, you need to actually have an intake of nutrients good enough to keep you going and to help rebuild muscle and keep you energized and keep you running down the road. Well, after I got these labs, it made me start to think, okay, well, I need to look at this a little bit different. So with my elevated A1C and, with the normal glucose level and normal A1C, it made me start to think, well, where am I going wrong? What is going on? I spend a lot of energy. So you would think, well, calories, I'm burning off all these calories. So, I don't have to worry about being overweight because I wasn't overweight. But yet my glucose markers were elevated. So I got to looking about, well, what is it I do in my lifestyle, my daily foods and intake of liquids that's making this elevated? Well, I happen to be someone that had this really cool, great nugget ice machine in my new kitchen of my house. And it, if you've had Sonic ice, you know what I'm talking about. That ice is primo. But I used to take that ice and pour my Mountain Dew in that ice, and I would have probably 2 cans of Mountain Dew every evening after I got through running and after dinner. I think, well, yeah, I've just ran 5-6 miles, and I've got to replenish my system a little bit. So I would do that, and then plus I would have candy throughout the day because I would frequently get kind of bored sitting around or had to take breaks between patients. So I would grab, hot tamales or maybe some Skittles, a handful of those, and just eat these. So this would be an ongoing, continuous process that would occur. And so I would do this on a daily basis, and, I wouldn't get overweight. I wasn't overweight, so yeah, I can eat all I want. Well, my labs told me different. So that's where I then turned around and decided, okay, I need to do something about this. So I slowly got to the point where I got off all my sodas, and I moved into sweet tea, thinking, well, that's okay. That's not near as bad as soda. Well, no, it's not, but it's still sugar. So then I had to go a little bit further, and I finally got off of the sweet tea. And I got rid of my candies. I finally slowly weaned myself off those. And the way I had to do is I just literally had to throw it away. I had to throw it away and could not get it, not have it around the house. So that's how I did that. And but as time went, I decided also, well, let's watch the carbohydrate intake too, and then increase the protein, of course, and started kind of a new diet type. I hate the word diet, a new lifestyle improvement to reduce my glucose and carbohydrate intake. And so I was able to take my A1C, which I think may have been around 5.7, but bring it down to 5. And my fasting insulin, I think that was around 8 or 9, and now that's at 0.8. So that dropped on my last one I saw noticed recently. And of course my glucose levels remain the same. So it just lets you know that this glucose revolution is something that's being really shoved in our faces constantly on television ads. So it's certainly something that makes a difference in your life.
So I do want to go back and explain a little bit of what hemoglobin A1C is. So we know what fasting glucose means. It's what your blood sugar level is when you haven't had anything to eat. Your hemoglobin A1C basically kind of takes an average of what your glucose has been over the last 3 months. And so that's why you get so much better insight to where your blood sugar really is, because it's taking an average. So it was catching, even though when Mark woke up and he had a nice stable glucose before eating, that wasn't catching all these spikes that he was having throughout the day or throughout the weeks when he would have these sodas or sugary snacks. So what can you do? You find out that your hemoglobin A1C is elevated. You find out that your fasting insulin is elevated. So what can you do? There is so much you can do without the help of a prescription, without a doctor at all.
First thing on the list, lifestyle. Change your lifestyle. I tell everybody 2 main medications that you can take to improve your health are diet and exercise. So you need to move more. The more you move, the more you're going to build muscle. And we're talking about big muscles, legs, back, big muscle groups. The more big muscles that you can build, they're going to be eating the glucose quicker, and they're going to give you more of a smoother spike, if you will, if you just keep eating the same way. But snacking is also just a really bad thing. You really need to do more of an intermittent fasting with feeding windows, and we'll talk more about that at a later podcast too, because that's a whole one in and of itself. Just you really have to limit your simple sugars and carbs, and really the key at this point is really to focus on your protein and good fat and fiber. That's certainly something that if you make protein and fiber your first priority of your meal, then you're going to find out that you're going to, number one, you're actually going to lose weight because they're very satiating. They will basically help you to fill your stomach up and give you a better sense of fullness, so that you're not going to fill up on all the carbs. There's even basically apple cider vinegar and things you can do like that too before meals. I'm not into that because I really don't like the apple cider vinegar that Tandi does though. Go for walks. Go for a walk and do some exercising after you get through eating. Anything you can do to improve your gut health will also ultimately make a difference in your glucose levels and your overall sense of well-being and hormone balance. Sleep, goodness, where does that end? 7 or 8 hours of sleep should be an average, and if you need more, get more. That's how your body repairs. That's how you're able to reduce the stress, which is something also that's a big problem, is stress management for folks.
One other thing that you can do just in your habits is to change the order in which you eat your food. If you start your meal with your proteins and fats and fiber, you can withstand some snaky foods that are usually really bad for glucose: bananas, grapes, oats, oat milk. all of those things are pretty well known sugar spikers. One way to tell how foods affect you is to wear a continuous glucose monitor. There's a lot of talk going on right now about CGMs and using that to see where you're at. We've both worn continuous glucose monitors, and it is extremely insightful. It lasts for about 2 weeks, so you can put the monitor on, see what you're doing, eat normally for a couple of days and see how that affects you. And then you can even start doing some experiments, like change the order in which you eat your food and see how that changes. I know for sure that when I go to breakfast, if I eat my eggs and my veggies first, I can have a few breakfast potatoes or a piece of toast, even with jelly on it, and my glucose will not spike if I eat the fat first. You can also experiment with the apple cider vinegar and see if it even helps you. Take it before a meal and see how that changes your spike. It's pretty interesting, and it's cool to see it. One thing that we noticed is that we could eat the exact same thing and it would affect one of us differently than the other. So it is very, very personal. I mean, that's one of the things that we talk about a lot in our practice, is that every body is unique. And just like some nutrition plans work better for some bodies, it's the same here. Like, everybody is different.
Yeah, that's right, Tandi. Everybody has a different body. But, these CGMs, I can tell you that, you think that, okay, well, I'm eating oatmeal and it's very heart healthy, but you're going to see such a spike out of eating that oatmeal that it'll probably scare you away from it. Bananas, along with that oatmeal, those things are just big spikers for our glucose levels. And it's these spikes that we don't want, because that's where you start seeing the surges in your insulin, and that'll cause free fatty acids to be delivered or be released from the liver. And then, then you're going to start seeing these cytokine inflammatory markers that get released, and those go out to create havoc, whether it be, within the brain, within the heart, all over. And then we're going to find out that, there's other options. There's medications and supplements that the individuals can take that back, start over. Then if you have these glucose spikes, then you're going to have, a situation where you may get deposition of the glucose into the fat. Okay, so now you start creating other problems, and then we start getting visceral fat increasing the size. So at this point, there's a lot of these that we can things we can do to curb those spikes, which we'll talk about too in other podcasts. So what can we do? There's things that we can do, from a medication or supplement standpoint. Everyone's heard of metformin. There's berberine. There's probiotics, and then GLP-1 agonists. That's kind of the new fad right now, with the folks getting shots and taking pills to help control and curb their blood sugar. So too much sugar over time is a driver of metabolic disease, and this may put you at risk for heart disease, obesity, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and the dreaded neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's. So if you need help navigating your health, visit us at revelationhealthandwellbeing.com, and we hope to hear from you. If you have any questions or thoughts, or want to hear something special on a podcast, just reach out to us. If you want to learn more about how we can help you with your health and help you navigate your health, contact us also at revelationhealthwellbeing.com. Have a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Rev Up Health. We hope you're leaving with some valuable insights to supercharge your health journey.
Don't forget to follow or subscribe to Rev Up Health wherever you listen to your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's episode, please leave us a rating and review.
Have a topic you want us to explore? Reach out to us on social media channels. We love hearing from our wellness community.
Until next time, keep thriving, and remember, Your journey to health is a journey to a better you.
Stay well, and we'll connect with you again soon. This is Tandi.
And this is Dr. Mark, signing off from Rev Up Health. Take care.
The information provided in this podcast is for educational purposes only and is not intended as medical advice. The content is designed to support, not replace, the relationship that exists between a patient and their healthcare provider. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before making any changes to your healthcare regimen, including diet, exercise, or treatment plans. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Revelation Health and Wellbeing.